Even in the last 5 years, the amount of pay, the amount of stress, the amount of extra work, the documentation you have to do, the amount of calls you have to make to the insurance company to get basic medications approved, utilization reviews, all this kind of stuff has skyrocketed. And that's the reason why, is because people are collaborating against us as medical professionals. And now is time for us to stand up and say, no more. This is BS. We're not going to do this. Hey, medical entrepreneurs, Dr. Adam Sewell here. So glad to have you here. We have a good one for today. Today, we're going to be talking about medical entrepreneurs and our community, and how many things in medicine are designed basically to separate us as medical professionals and not designed to ever bring us together. And it's done on purpose this way, and we'll kind of explain that today. And also to realize the importance of being part of the medical entrepreneur community and being part of a community of people who understand you. You know, when you really look at a traditional like medical entrepreneur's life, or even any medical practitioner's life outside of academics, most medical professionals are extremely isolated. They usually work by themselves, or if they work with other people, those other people are subordinates to them. Many times, you know, for example, if you have a physician that's a specialist, it would be very rare for them to work with another specialist, just because in general, they are a specialist. And so in order for them to be productive, you know, they're going to be kind of on their own, working as hard as they can. And in these days, with the way that insurance is basically consistently getting cut and not being increased with inflation, basically you're going to have to work harder and harder and see more patients to stay in the same place. And so that leaves a lot of medical professionals and medical entrepreneurs very, very isolated. And so one of the things I want to mention is there's a real truism that I learned early in my life, and I don't think I really understood it until I got older. And I'd always heard this thing that said, you know, you earn the same as your top 5 friends. And when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, because does that mean you can't be friends with people that don't make as much money? It sounded kind of like, you know, weird like that. But what I found in my life is that's really true. And the reason why is because whoever you're constantly around, whether you realize it or not, you're going to start to absorb things from them. You're going to start to pick up things from them. So if you're around people every day that are negative, you're going to get negative. If you're around people every day that don't know how to do something or complain about something and they're not, you know, making improvements in themselves, then, you know, those excuses that they're constantly spouting out, that you're constantly listening to, whether you want to or not, are going to become your excuses. A lot of people, you know, kind of think that just because we're highly educated, we have a highly developed brain, that we don't have susceptibility to other people. But the reality is, when you look at the data, when you look at the science, you look at psychology, you realize that humans are very much communal organisms. We require community. We require communication. And there's many things that happen on a community basis that are, in many cases, quite different than what happens when you're an individual on your own. And so it's really important to realize that who you're hanging out with will directly affect the results of your life. And so that's why for medical entrepreneurs, not only do most of them, you know, feel very isolated, very alone, because they really are alone unless they're in an academic organization. And I would even argue, even in academics, they're somewhat more isolated, but not as much as private practice. But basically, if you're in an organization where you're not able to hang out with and talk to and communicate to like-minded people, then what happens is you start to kind of lose yourself to those people that are surrounding you. So if you're spending most of your time, and the top 5 people you're spending time with in your life are not where you want to be, then you really need to rethink your strategy, because the reality is that wherever those people are, that's where you're headed. So, and it's, you know, many times it's unconscious. You may not be aware of the things that you're doing, but it becomes like that. One of the side effects of all of our training was that we are kind of taught over and over, maybe not overtly, but we're taught over and over to be alone. I mean, I think about my journey into medicine and just how much time I spent alone, whether I was in college, you know, studying on my own, like definitely in medical school. I mean, I can tell you, like, I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours literally just in this like little kind of cubicle thing that was in our med school library, just studying by myself, because that was the best way for me to learn. And so these kind of habits continue even when you get out of your training, just because of that. One of the other things that we're always taught is basically we're not taught especially as physicians, but pretty much all medical professionals are taught at some level that they have to be kind of like the main person who calls the shots, right? So you have to, if you're a nurse practitioner on the front lines, if you're a doctor on the front lines, like you're the only person there. If you're a CRNA in a rural hospital and nobody else is there, like you're the one who's making that call. If you're an ER physician in, middle of nowhere, Arkansas, there's no other doctors around that are easily accessible to help you out. One of the things that happens is that we are taught over and over to kind of like be these supermen. Don't reach out for help, just deal with it. You'll be stronger if you can deal with it, this kind of stuff. And while there is something to that, it doesn't really help you too much to be like that, because what happens is that you actually decrease your effectiveness. And this is something I learned firsthand in medical school. One of the things that they do, like I went to University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, and one of the things that they did, I don't know if they still do it now, but when you first start in your med school, they actually give you so much reading to do that it is almost impossible. Like, I think it was something like 210 pages a day was our first year of med school reading requirement. So 210 pages of, dense medical textbook you had to read every day just to stay up with, what you're learning, right? So extremely large volumes of information, extremely dense text. I would even argue that many times the way the text was written was definitely not efficient for you to learn. It was written more like an academic paper and not, not so much like, practical, like here's what you need to know kind of thing. And so what I learned very quickly was that in medical school, we started to form these kind of groups, and we had like, study groups, we had groups of friends. And what we found was that by working together, many times I would get opinions and viewpoints from other people that I didn't realize. We could also divide up work easier. So like one of us could read a section in the book and actually summarize it and kind of get out the main points. And then we could all take our sections and combine them together into one document for a review, that kind of thing. And so by having this network of medical professionals and medical entrepreneurs, it allows you to tap into resources that are far greater than your own. The reality is that, no matter who you are, you have a singular perspective, for me, like I can only see things through my viewpoint. But somebody else who's lived a different life will see things quite differently than me and will likely have different viewpoints on many things and may even have different conclusions that could be correct or could not be correct. But those are things that I could learn from just by being around them. And so I really want to encourage, if you're a medical entrepreneur, please reach out to our community, join our community, talk to other medical entrepreneurs, realize that you're not alone on your journey and there's other people out there to help you. The reality is that in our world today, particularly now, we live in a very dynamic world and things are changing very rapidly. Like medicine itself is literally changing pretty much daily. There's a lot of organizations that are against medical professionals. And I would tell you there's also a lot of organizations that are anti-physician as well. Just to give you one example is everybody talks about the American Medical Association. And I remember when I first joined my med school, the first year they wanted us to join as a med student to the AMA, and I did. And I got all their, newsletters and all this stuff. And, they talked about how they were doing this and that. But I was shocked when I saw basically the American Medical Association essentially support socialized medicine. You might remember when Obama was in office, he actually came out with his announcement of how he was going to change healthcare and make it better and all this kind of stuff. And he launched Obamacare, which, if you've done the research, you'll see that it was actually a horrible move. It actually cost more for everybody. The only people who actually made more money were large corporations, particularly insurance companies. And so basically, Obamacare itself was actually very negative for physicians and very negative for patient care. And one of the reasons why the American Medical Association supported that, even though they knew it was negative for physicians, they knew 100% it was negative for physicians. But the reason why they supported it was the federal government actually licenses the CPT codes that the Medicare uses from the American Medical Association. And the federal government actually came to the American Medical Association and said, hey, if you don't support this, we're basically not going to license your codes anymore. And this is, multiple $100 million deal every year that the Medicare actually pays to license these codes so they can run, their Medicare billing, right? And so basically they gave in 100%. They even had this, standing ovation of all these doctors applauding, applauding their own demise. And every physician that I knew at the time was just like, this makes no sense. Like, if you actually look into it, it looks like we're actually going to have worse care. Patients are going to get less things. We're all going to be paying more in taxes for the stuff, and healthcare costs are going to increase. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. Patients had worse care. The cost of healthcare skyrocketed. Private insurance is just insane, just like it is today. I mean, I see patients that are basically, they pay an average patient that has like Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's not uncommon for them to pay $1,500 to $2,000 a month for insurance. I mean, keep in mind, like, only 10 years ago was that would have been considered outrageous, but now that's the way we live, So basically, it didn't help anybody increase costs. But the reality is that even our own American Medical Association, who's supposed to have our interests at heart, really doesn't. They have their own interests at heart. They have their own, they want to make money. They want to get paid from the federal government, and they're going to do whatever it is, no matter how much it hurts physicians and the healthcare system to do that. And so that's why I personally don't support the American Medical Association. I think the American Medical Association is essentially a fraud. I don't think it's good for healthcare to follow their directives, and I don't think it's good for physicians to join them or to follow them. They basically have their own agenda, and their agenda isn't helping physicians, and it isn't helping medical professionals, and it definitely isn't helping patients. Insurance companies also are collaborating against you. A lot of people don't realize this, but United Healthcare is probably the most dangerous health insurance company against medical professionals that exists. And the reason why I say that is that United Healthcare is a rapidly growing insurance company. But a lot of people forget that what United Healthcare really is basically a company that is essentially designed to find the best way not to pay things. In fact, United Healthcare actually does a lot of claim processing for the other insurance companies. It would not be uncommon for United Healthcare, for example, to do audits and also utilization reviews for Blue Cross Blue Shield, for Aetna, for Humana, these kind of things. That's one of the services they offer to other insurance companies because they all work together. Once again, they're collaborating against medical professionals. And they're using things like artificial intelligence, advanced algorithms to figure out the best way to essentially not pay you what you're owed. Whether that's taking 10% of the claims that you send in and literally throwing them away, which they have been documented for decades doing. Most insurance companies do this. And this increases your cost because you have to have your people rework the same claims and send the same forms in. And this is legal under the law, which, of course, their lobbyists help to make. And so basically, you have massive organizations that are essentially collaborating to divide us as medical professionals. They play games, saying, hey, this type of professional is not as good as this professional. They cause infighting just to continually divide us so that they can take control. Hospital corporations are notorious for basically collaborating against physicians and nurses. It's very common for them to have issues with nursing staffs and nursing shortages. And they're constantly playing games with that. If you work in a big hospital and you're a nurse, you know what I mean? The amount of work what you do today as a nurse compared to what you did 10 years ago as a nurse, huge difference. The amount of paperwork you have to do, the amount of overhead you have to deal with, the amount of just documentation and all this kind of stuff, the amount of patients you have to take care of is just to the point where it's literally overwhelming. And that's why you have many nurses that just quit because they just can't handle it, And then recently we've had even other issues where we had state organizations basically go and attack nurses and other medical professionals and basically try to, even raise criminal charges when they make a mistake. There was a nurse who made a mistake and gave the patient the wrong drug just because they were using a new kind of Pyxis and it was very confusing, and a drug that shouldn't have been there was there. And it had the exact same color and exact same size as the drug the person wanted to give. And they selected the wrong thing and they mixed it up, gave it to the patient. The patient had a bad outcome. And the local state, they had a malpractice suit. They went through all the stuff that normally would happen with a mistake that's made by a medical professional. And then several years later, the state organization had to justify its, reason to be. So it started filing criminal charges against medical professionals who made errors. So basically, you could be a medical professional and basically face criminal charges now for making a mistake. So not only is it that you have to be really good at what you do, but if you're not good, then you could actually go to jail for that. Basically, we see over and over time again that essentially the healthcare system is conspiring against medical professionals over and over. And that's why I think it's so important for you to join the medical entrepreneur community. Get out of the mainstream medical system. Your pay's already gone down by 30% in the last 2 years if you haven't figured it out. Your dollars are the same, but the value of those dollars are less. And the reality is that if you even look at how much people used to get paid in medicine from the year 2000 to now, basically it's a huge difference. The quality of life is completely different. And even in the last 5 years, the amount of pay, the amount of stress, the amount of extra work and documentation you have to do, the amount of calls you have to make to the insurance company to get basic medications approved, utilization reviews, all this kind of stuff has skyrocketed. And that's the reason why, is because people are collaborating against us as medical professionals. And now it's time for us to stand up and say, no more. This is BS. We're not going to do this. And so join the medical entrepreneur community, build your own practice of your dreams, get away from mainstream healthcare, get into taking care of patients who actually want to be taken care of and are actually happy to pay you to take care of them. Get away from insurance companies who literally take more than 51% of every dollar spent on healthcare goes to the administration of an insurance. I just wanted to stop for a second and think about this. Every dollar that goes into healthcare, more than half of it goes to the administration of the insurance for that healthcare. Does that make any sense at all? I mean, just imagine if this was something different. Imagine if you went to the grocery store and you went to go buy groceries, and 51% of what you pay for groceries was actually went to the management of the store, and only whatever you have left actually paid for your groceries. Your bill would be huge. It wouldn't make any sense, and nobody would go to that grocery store. But in healthcare, this is standard. This is how they run. So realize that once again, you have to start banding together, and you need to join our community. And you join the medical entrepreneur community to be with like-minded people and find solutions to get away from the system that essentially is basically hell-bent on hurting you and essentially making you into a slave. There's a lot to be said here. And basically, I think that one of the things that's really important is that you realize that if you want to have a different life, if you want to have a better life, if you want to have the life of a medical entrepreneur where you can call your shots and you have a clinic where you can deliver the care that you think is right, not what United Healthcare says you can do, not what Aetna says you can do, not what some hospital corporation says you can do. You want to deliver healthcare that's best for the patient, that you want to use your medical decision making to basically help this patient, then you have to realize that you're going to have to leave mainstream medicine. And initially it's kind of scary, but you can just, with all of healthcare, you can just take one foot out and start building something for yourself. Start building a clinic on your own. Start seeing patients on your own. Follow the journeys of other medical entrepreneurs. I see all the time medical entrepreneurs that are looking for others. And a lot of people think, I got to do this on my own. Don't do that. Don't do it on your own. Connect to the community. There's people that have resources, people that have extra space in their office, people that have x-ray machines that are only being used part of the time. There's so much stuff out there that you can tap into being a part of the medical entrepreneur community. That's just what I wanted to share today, and just, really emphasize once again, you're not alone. We're out there for you. Our medical entrepreneurs are all over the place, and we're stronger together. So one vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity.